All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to course on technology and the future of medicine. Today is unique. I had a slide set that is the same slide set I've been using for 12 years. I was kind of embarrassed about that. So I asked one of our TAs, Hannah Grozdanik, if she would like to reformulate the slide set. So she has produced a 2023 version of my old entire slide set. So isn't that cool? It's never happened the entire 12 years of the course. Yeah. So this is about the technological singularity explained and promoted. So the objectives are understand that one should not fear complexity. Do not seek the one great truth. There are many truths and they can be true concurrently. Understand the three main schools of belief about the singularity. Understand the four main paths to the singularity. The objectives continued. Understand the history of the singularity and Marcus Hutter's main ideas about it. Marcus Hutter is an AI scientist who's been associated with this course from the beginning. And the special thing about him is he marches to the beat of a different drummer. And any AI scientist you know will tell you Marcus Hutter is not one of us. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. But I think we can learn a lot from Marcus Hutter. Understand the challenge of promoting the singularity, the ideas behind Future Day and Longevity Day, and if the changes brought about by AI during this rendition of the course are as profound as we think. Like, we think that Chat GPT is just like getting to the Mount Everest base camp, and that during early 2023, GPT-4 will be released, and it's going to be amazing. It'll be much more accurate than Chat GPT, better in every way, and change the lives of every human on the planet. And what Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has said about this period is during this 1 year, 2023, there'll be 500 years of progress. So he's saying because of the AI changes, we'll see 500 years of progress in a single year. So if they're going to be changes as profound as that, suggest ways that we might celebrate and commemorate living through such an unusual year. Now, you realize there's a risk of me saying things like this, because what happens if 2023 is just like 2022? Then I'm going to look pretty silly. But anyway, hopefully that won't happen. Do not fear complexity. I don't know whether you do fear it, but think about it. Your significant other is complex. That's good, right? I mean, a lot of the things you value most in life are very complicated. So there's no harm in complexity. The real world is complex. And there's a very Canadian thing here that I'm writing about, which is equipoise. Do you know, if you were in a learning institution in any other country in the world, equipoise would not be taught? It's a Canadian idea. There aren't a lot of ideas like that. Most of the ideas that you learn about, they're in all other cultures and all other countries, but not equipoise. That's a really Canadian thing. Seemingly contradictory ideas can all be true, and you can find a balance between them. The future of transplantation is the promotion of deceased donor donation till there's no waiting list, and tolerance, and tissue engineering, repair, and stem cell generated of new organs, and pig to human transplants, which we're talking about on the 26th. So Peter Diamandis, the CEO of the X Prize and of Singularity University, says when faced with a choice between two desirable goals, choose both. Did you ever think of doing that? Why not? Yeah. So in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, a world is confronted that's much more organic than expected. I wonder if I can move these boxes. I probably can. Yeah, there we go. Isn't that much more convenient? Move the people down here. Yeah, so you remember in Alice in Wonderland, we picked this to try to cross all cultures, and hopefully all of you have heard of Alice in Wonderland. If we picked anything else, you wouldn't all have heard of it. The main difficulty Alice had was in managing her flamingo, describing the croquet game. In the technological singularity, we face a world that's much less organic than expected and could develop without us. In other words, does not need us. This idea of a world that does not need us becomes important if in 2023 we're really going to encounter for the first time machines that not only are smarter than we are, but seem like they're smarter than we are, and we feel they're smarter than we are. And with their help, we can write better than we can naturally write as a biological being, draw better, think better, create better, and faster than we possibly could as an unaided human, just a biological human. So that idea of whether the world could continue without us, hopefully that's not what's going to happen. That these smarter than human computer entities are going to be strongly motivated to make the world the best for humans it could possibly be. So that's what we're hoping is the outcome. The main schools of belief about the singularity, these graphics are really awesome. Thank you. Accelerating change, event horizon, intelligence explosion. 4 main paths to the singularity: create an artificial intelligence that exceeds human intelligence, build human-computer interfaces that allow humans to go beyond their innate intelligence to a significant extent. That's called cybernetic singularity. Find ways in biology to improve upon natural human intellect. Build large computer networks in which beyond human intelligence emerges. Singularity University is not a real university at all. It's not an accredited university. It's kind of an entity. But I went to that entity for the Singularity Executive course in the spring of 2010, February, March 2010. And I became strongly motivated to have courses like what they were teaching occur within universities. And I started promoting this. It seemed like I'm a full-time university faculty member. Maybe if I want it so bad, I should create it. And that's how this course became created. The experience of attending Singularity University, one that grows and grows after the completion of the course, like you meet people there and you have unique experiences. And it just, I would say that process has never stopped since I went there. So you're benefiting a great deal from that 10-day course that I took back in 2010, you know, and the way that it has grown. And this is a picture of that class. And you can tell in these group pictures, I always stick out like a sore thumb, right? I really don't fit. I'm the only academic, the only physician, the only old guy. You know, I mean, really, I'm massively different from everybody else. But it worked, yeah. And so I've stayed in touch with all these people. It's been really fun over that period of time. This is Ray Kurzweil, who's the best known Singularity University person. And you may hear criticisms of him as if he held narrow views, but that's not true at all. He spent most of his life answering criticisms of his previous books. So, I mean, that's like a full-time job. You know, he wrote the Singularity is Near and many other books. Now he's writing a book, The Singularity is Nearer, oh, closer, coming out, I think this year or next. So the history here, and a lot of these are now Marcus Hutter's slides, and we have an audio slide set that you can listen to. And the difference between what I'm now telling you and that audio slide set is that the slide set has very, very dark both the sound quality and slides. So you start out a little bit depressed, and with each slide you get more and more depressed. So hopefully with me running it, it's not quite so bad. Okay, so the ancient history, where did this begin? It's like an unbelief. If you had to pick a beginning, if you were writing a fiction of the world, you'd never be able to think of this. R. Thornton, the editor of the Expounder of Primitive Christianity, how's that for a name? Wrote about the recent invention of the four-function mechanical calculator, saying such machines, by which the scholar may, by turning a crank, grind out a solution of a problem without the fatigue of mental application, would by its introduction into schools do incalculable injury. But who knows, but such machines, when brought to greater perfection, may not think of a plan to remedy all their own defects and then grind out ideas beyond the ken of mortal mind. So that was written in 1847. It's pretty insightful about the idea that machines could be smarter and more capable than we are. So the further history, in 1863, 4 years after Darwin published On the Origin of Species, Samuel Butler published a letter captioned "Darwin Among the Machines." It captures human evolution to machine. It compares human evolution to machine evolution, prophesizing half in jest that machines would eventually replace man in the supremacy of the earth. In the course of the ages, we will find ourselves the inferior race. The letter races many of the themes now being debated by proponents of the technological singularity. In Erewhon, which you would all recognize is nowhere backwards, right? That's what the word Erewhon is. Butler argued that there is no security against the ultimate development of mechanical consciousness. In the fact of machines possessing little consciousness now, a mollusk has not much consciousness. Reflect upon the extraordinary advance which machines have made during the last few hundred years, and note how slowly the animal and vegetable kingdoms are advancing. The more highly organized machines are creatures, not so much of yesterday as of the last 5 minutes, so to speak, in comparison with past time. So this is Marcus Hutter. You may wonder about his relationship to you, and that's easy to answer. The one time he had direct contact with U of A students, he hated it. It was such a dysphoric experience for him that not only did he ask me never to provide it again, but he wanted every copy of the video that showed him interacting with U of A students destroyed. It's exactly the opposite of David Pierce, who you'll have a teaching session with on the 24th, who loves interacting with U of A students, and you will directly interact with him. So one of the other cool things about Marcus Hutter is that his relationships are a little bit different, and you can learn a great deal from him because of his different view of the world. And here he's talking about, can intelligence explode? So the next 9 slides are modified from his PowerPoint, the one with the audio. So the technological singularity was first described by Stanislaw Ulam, and then I.J. Good and Ray Sameloff and Werner Vinci, who's a science fiction author who's still writing. And then there's widespread popularization in Ray Kurzweil's books and in the, and also in Marcus Hutter's writing. And this is one of the graphs of Moore's law. You need to know about Moore's law. It's one of the main ideas of the course. This exponential curve of price performance of computing, and the idea that at some point computers are as smart as individual humans and then the whole human race. So that point where machines are as smart as the whole human race is predicted to occur somewhere between 2035 and 2045. So you will all experience that. And I would imagine that however weird 2023 is, the singularity in 2035 to 2045 will be even more weird. Superintelligence by Moore's law. Moore's law, computation doubles every 1.5 years. Price performance of computing. It's now been valid for over 50 years. As long as there is a demand for more computation, Moore's law could continue to hold because the technology of how chips are made and all that kind of thing keeps changing. It could continue for many decades before computronium is reached. So computronium is just kind of a theoretical idea of everything being turned into computers and computing, right? So the computational capacity of the human brain is 10 to the 15th to 16th flops, and software and hardware will be able to reach that speed sometime soon. Yeah, so the doubling times now every 1.5 years. Originally was technological doubling every 250,000 years. So in the beginning, when humans live in caves and stuff, things didn't change very much from year to year. It's much faster now. So this curve of accelerating evolution, you need to know the top part of this. What happens at the peak of this evolution? The universe wakes up. Patterns of matter and energy in the universe become saturated with intelligent processes and knowledge. Yeah, so you need to know those ideas of like what we're heading for in the long run. Is the singularity negotiable? Probably not. It's like a black hole. When you get close enough to it, you cannot resist entering. It's impossible. So probably the singularity is like that. Maybe this singularity is already now unavoidable. Politically, it's very difficult, but not impossible to resist technology or market forces. It will be similarly difficult to prevent AGI research, and even more so to prevent the development of faster computers. So you may wonder, being taught in this course by me as opposed to some other generic human, the difference is there are very few people talking about AGI occurring and humans benefiting from that. Most people are talking about how artificial general intelligence is going to kill all humans and we're not doing anything about it, and it's a huge problem. So 97% of the people are sort of in that camp. And Rich Sutton and I and Stuart Russell are three people in the camp that AGI could turn out really, really well. You know, imagine a future that you'd really like, and AGI would be many, many-fold greater than the best future you can possibly think of. So I'm a much more optimistic person about the future than sort of average. If you're within a situation where the singularity is occurring, you might not notice anything because everything is speeded up similarly. But from the outside, what people would notice is white noise. there'd be this hiss coming from you because, yeah. And that's a unique Marcus Hutter idea. No one else has described what the singularity would sound like except Marcus Hutter. So, yeah. And the Library of Babel. You may wonder whether anybody has ever given up on me because I'm too stupid. And that's what happened when Marcus Hutter and I talked on the phone about this slide. And I said, the students don't understand it. I don't understand it. Explain to me this Library of Babel. Having all information is like having no information. How could that possibly be? And he just thought it was unbelievable that I couldn't understand that. He really tried to teach me. He just shook his head like, God, I'm sorry for you. You're so incredibly stupid. So if you don't understand this slide, I wouldn't worry about it very much because I also don't completely understand it. But what I understand is that having a library of all books would be also the mistakenly printed books, not just the properly printed books, but the ones with lots of errors or so on. So you can imagine if you have enough of that, it becomes unsearchable. So you can't find anything because of the combination of the volume of what's in the library plus the errors. And that's the reason why having a library of everything is just as bad as not having anything. Yeah. But if you don't understand that, don't worry about it. Yes.
But wouldn't that be similar to what we have now with the internet?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I think so. It's not that different from normal life now, where a lot of things, like if you think, I don't know if you're really interested in what I am up to, but the Stewart-Russell relationship is really, really interesting. In December 2021, he gave a series of lectures about AI in which he said human beings must always be in charge. Even if AI is massively smarter than we are, human beings must always be in charge. Period. Period means no discussion. Don't ask me any questions. That's the way it is. And I said, that's ridiculous, particularly being unwilling to, discuss this. And if computers are so much smarter, they'll be able to outwit you easily. And the fact that you want to be in charge will mean nothing, right? So anyway, you might think because Stuart Russell's like the most famous AI guy who wrote the most popular textbook, and I'm sort of a kidney pathologist from off the US map. The US map used to contain every major city in Canada except for Edmonton, because we're just a little farther north. So the US wall map used to contain all the major Canadians. Yeah, so why should he pay attention to me? So a year later, he is presenting to the Nobel Prize Committee. They have this dialogue, Nobel Prize dialogue session. They hadn't had it for years because of COVID. They had the first dialogue. He's presenting. And he presents exactly what Rich Sutton and I have been saying, that a world with computers much smarter than we are running it could be way better than a world with humans running it. He thinks that the gross domestic profit could be 10 times what it is now for every country. Everybody's creativity, productivity, scientific advance, everything could be massively speeded up. So it's a remarkable turnaround between what he said in December 2021 and 2022. And it's a very good thing because he lives in a normal place. He's like San Francisco, right? So it seems it's not quite as remote as Edmonton, where I and Rich Sutton live. Anyway, it's just a little aside. Okay, comparison. Outsiders cannot witness a true intelligence singularity. And so these slides get sort of deeper and deeper and harder to understand. And then about halfway into the lecture, I shift to how we're going to celebrate the future and future days. So I just wanted to tell you that that's coming. So as each slide gets darker and darker, you don't think it's going to keep going that way. because it isn't. Yeah. Conclusion: strength, intelligence, singularity is neither experienced by insiders nor outsiders. Assuming recording technology does not break down, then a singularity seems more interesting from outsiders looking in. You know, you get the white noise and the people moving very quickly. They don't realize they're doing that. On the other hand, insiders actively live potential societal changes, while outsiders only passively observe them. So, like, usually at this point, the students are looking completely worn out and like, why did I come to this terrible, depressing lecture? So at this point, we try to raise your spirits and stimulate interest in the singularity through a new holiday, Future Day, and new holidays, Future Day, and Longevity Day. You probably think, like most things, that, you know, Future Day is one of these things that started elsewhere and it's growing and growing and growing and get a big, but it's not like that. It's exactly the opposite. This was Future Day in 2012, the first time that we celebrated it, and this is the way we celebrated it. I still have that Future Day banner. I can bring it in for you guys if you want. And that year, there were 16 celebrations around the world. You can't really call it a holiday because most people have never heard of Future Day and don't celebrate it. But there were these 16 major cities. But since 2012, every year there are fewer and fewer cities celebrating it. So at the present time, it's sort of like Melbourne, Australia, and us, and that's it. So it's kind of comical how that is going. And like we have a plan someday, some group of students, not necessarily you guys, but some group of students will actually look at this slide and say, yes, we're going to do that. And so we'll negotiate with the Art Gallery of Alberta, have a big party and salon there. Probably know the Paris Salon, that in the intellectual life of humans was very, very important. All these smart people getting together in Paris and exchanging ideas across all sorts of disciplines. And we had the idea of the same thing occurring here in Edmonton at the Art Gallery. And Julie Lynn Wong is eager to lead that gathering whenever it occurred. We've been waiting quite a few years, though, because thus far there hasn't been a single class of you guys who's grasped the idea and said, yes, we're going to make this happen. Here are some students from the past, and you can help us figure out how or whether we're going to celebrate Future Day in 2023. So Future Day is March 1st. There is no class on March 1st. There's a class with Rich Sutton on February 28th, and there's a class with Patrick Pilarski on March 2nd. So I guess March 2nd might be the time to celebrate. But both Rich Sutton and Patrick Pilarski are a bit skeptical about the idea of Future Day because it's just celebrating something that keeps moving, right? You know, that day that you're calling Future Day keeps moving, and it's, yeah. So the Big Bang Theory is much more popular than this course, but when it was an active TV program, talked about the same subjects that we talk about in the course, except they are in the comedy sphere and we're serious, right? But anyway, otherwise the subject matter is relatively similar. And the singularity itself was discussed in an episode of Big Bang Theory, October 1st, 2010, and was the co-founder of Apple Computer, had a part in that particular program. Yeah, so think now of how we might celebrate the future and how make it different from all other celebrations. So many of you know in Asia, the Holi festival where they have pigments and sprinkle pigments on each other and so on. It's really cool, except that in the beginning, it was really hard to find these brightly colored pigments. But if you use toxic paints, you know, they're really bad for you to breathe in, then it's really easy to find. So you get a lot of medical injury to people as a part of this, which isn't very good. Yeah, so that's probably not for us. Then there's this poem, the Crayola bomb. Maybe we should develop a Crayola bomb as our next secret weapon, a happiness weapon, a beauty bomb. And every time a crisis developed, we would launch one, would explode high in the air, explode softly, send thousands, millions of little parachutes into the air, floating down to the earth. Boxes of Crayolas, wouldn't go cheap either. Boxes of 64 with a sharpener built right in, with silver and gold and magenta and peach and lime and amber and umber and all the rest. And the people would smile and get a funny look on their faces. Yeah, anyway, I'm sorry that we lost the last line there. Let's see if we can. And cover the world with imagination. There we go. If you don't like that kind of art, then there's the Roomba robotic vacuum cleaner. If you do a time lapse, you can get this kind of image. Hot air balloon festivals. Yeah, that would be really cool, eh? I think it's very, very expensive. We don't have the budget for hot air balloon, but it's a nice fantasy to have, right? This course, running a hot air balloon festival. Yeah. And we need some sort of theme song. We thought of the windmills of your mind, round like a circle and a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning, on an ever spinning reel, like a snowball down a mountain, or a carnival balloon, like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you'll find in the windmills of your mind. So what are we going to do about this in Edmonton? What we did in 2015, which seemed uber exciting, was to have the high-level bridge lit for us, right? You can ask for certain colors to be on the bridge, and they put the name of your organization, so cars entering the bridge know who the bridge is lit for and all that kind of stuff. But it's an undersubscribed program. It still exists, but most nights there's nobody whose colors are lighting the bridge, just completely random because nobody's been signed up. So it's kind of sad from that point of view. I don't know that we want to do it again. We did do it once, but you could think of that. Is there something else like that we should do, could do? Your suggestions would be greatly welcomed. How can we capture the imagination of the public to start everyone thinking about these matters? We need the mainstream public to regard the future technological singularity as fact, not fiction. I honestly think things will occur like Chat GPT and other, experiences, like you just sitting there and your kid's doing its homework and you realize that its homework is like way beyond what you could ever do, and your kid is doing this. How is that happening? It's inputting the homework assignment in a Chat GPT and then simply typing what chat. Yeah. So the whole idea of what plagiarism is, what you can take credit for, I mean, we're going to be rethinking all that kind of thing. Because when you enter the prompt, then you own the result. But the result may be so much smarter than you are. How do you do that? I don't really know. I just entered the prompt and this is what I got. Yeah. It's nice to have that capability. Suddenly you have this superpower where you can do everything 10 times better. But on the other hand, there would be times when you wistfully look back at the day when everything depended upon your own biological skill and you didn't have this superpower and what you were able to do then. So that's the end of this. Wow, I did that quickly. 40 minutes. So, all right, I'm gonna unshare. Okay, so should we be able to see the slides? Yes. So you weren't, what were you seeing? Let's see. What? I
just saw a black screen, but I was able to follow along on the slides that was sent out, so yeah. I wasn't sure.
No, I'm sorry. The course is working so much better for the people in the room. Well, next time, so on this Thursday, we're not going to have a face-to-face class. You're all going to be on Zoom with Shauna Pandya. And I think the situation's simpler, so it's bound to work. You know, I don't know why it isn't working for Gia, Lynn, and Matthew. I restarted my computer, so I don't have any programs using memory. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. But so I think that on Thursday, it will be Shauna's computer that is presenting the slides to you. It'll be a whole different situation. But a week from today on the, wait a minute. No, on a week from Thursday, on the 19th, we'll have a workshop here where she will divide you into teams and face-to-face teaching. You'll all create a fictional company and then give a pitch about how yours is the best company and all that kind of thing. Yeah. So, so I guess every rendition of the course is a little different. And we haven't had so much difficulty transmitting the slides to the outside, but, you know, of the 10 students taking the course, 8 of them are here and 2 there. So anyway, we're satisfying the majority. Yeah, we also haven't heard from the 2 medical students, so I have to figure that out. But the medical student participation in the course is only 12 hours, so they can decide which parts of the course to take. So maybe that's why we have not encountered them. So why don't I ask Matthew and Gia, Lynn, what questions do you have? Okay, so let's see what comes back here. What about you guys? Any questions? Am I pushing you to think about something that you have absolutely zero interest in? Or some of it seem exciting when you go back past the art gallery of Alberta the next time? Are you going to start thinking about our massive party in there and how it's going to work? Edmonton Salon, you know, it could change the world as much as the Paris Salon. Why not? We have a lot of smart people in Edmonton. Yeah, we could suddenly, that building becomes famous because of us, huh? It's a fun fantasy to have. Nothing at the moment. Okay, what about you guys? Do you have questions? Yeah.
So I was searching up like medicine and like the technological singularity, and the only thing that really popped up was your 2013 paper on it, that like kind of referred to this course.
Right.
And I was just like interested in why isn't this really talked about? Because back then the comment was that you also couldn't find anything that discussed this, but then like 9 years.
Right. But you see, think of the advantage of doing something no one has done before. And this is a pitch I give young people a lot. It's actually easier than following the path someone else has taken. Like if you decide what you want to do in your life, find a slightly older person than you who's already doing it and follow them, then forever you're being compared with them. And what if you're actually stupider and slower and inferior in every way? It's so bad. Every day you wake up and you say, yet again, the idea that I'm an inferior human will be reinforced today because this person is doing way better than me. Whereas if you're doing something no one has done before, there's no competition whatsoever. Nobody can criticize you for not doing it fast enough or being so clumsy when you begin because nobody else has done it at all, right? So I've done a lot of things like that. And so it is something you could also do. It just starts by believing that you can do it, you know, and that it doesn't matter. So what do you think about starting something when you don't know what you're doing? Everybody who starts something new, that's what they do. You think they have a complete plan for something that's never been done before? Absolutely not. They're flying by the seat of their pants and making it up as they go along, right? Yeah. So like I've often been in the circumstance, if you do a PubMed search on whatever I'm doing, I am the only person there, right? And that's kind of cool. Like right now, if you would put in, you know, DALL-E and medicine, the stuff that you find would be me, and Chat GPT and medicine, the stuff you find would be me. So there's kind of an advantage of that, but it also makes you kind of self-reliant. You can get this feeling that you're like alone in the wilderness, right? And you're not really, but I mean it's a little bit like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Solitude, you can really get to know yourself very well. Suppose you have never meditated and never will, right? Well, you meet all these meditation people who talk about it all the time, say how great it is and so on. But like being alone with yourself is almost like that. You're sort of lost in your own thoughts, right? And so on. So there can be a lot of, advantage of that. And it's not that you've done anything wrong. So the other thing you would notice about my medical career is I've done a lot of things where I'm the only physician there. A lot of physicians, they're constantly aware of like how much money they're making, right? How much how much did I make today and stuff like that. And if you go somewhere where you're the only physician there, you're kind of thinking, oh my God, that amount has gone down to zero, right? How did I get here? I have to make sure to never do this again. That's the wrong way to think about it. I mean, you can accomplish enormous, amazing things when the configuration of you and the other people in the room has never existed before. This particular group has never met with a physician, or say with an academic. Yeah. So there's a funny story about Bono from the singing group U2. He has a recent book, and he's kind of on a high of exploring his life. But there's a part of his life that's not in the book, which is very interesting to me. It used to be on his website. And what the website said is, I love taking part in meetings where other people look at the meetings and say, those people have no reason to be in the same room together. How did that happen? And I found that so exciting. I found it really exciting. I would say a lot of the things that I've done are following that model, thinking, well, Bono said that, and now I'm doing this, and he'd be so proud of me. But what Bono eventually did, I think the people handling his career and advising what should be in the book and what shouldn't be in the book and what should be on the website, eventually said, take that down, because all the crazies in the world get the idea that they can meet you personally, and that's going to be hard to manage. So, I mean, that's an opinion we don't want out there, that you think it's really cool when you meet with people, you look at it and say, how did those people ever end up in the same room together? So now the only place you can find that Bono quote is on my sites, because it's gone from his. But I don't know exactly what that means. You can argue, well, it's the one thing Bono did that he realized he was wrong about, and you're still doing it. And I don't think so. I think he still feels that way. It's not convenient from a security point of view for him to promote that idea of that kind of meeting. But I've done that. If you look at my poetry side, what kind of poetry group? It was at-risk youth. It's sort of like you guys, except you're kind of, elite. You're in higher education, right? And stuff. There's another side of Edmonton young people, which are people who hardly have a nickel or dime to themselves and are at risk every time they go out the door, because the way they look is it is sort of offensive to other people, because maybe the gender isn't quite clear, or other things. And so that makes you really poetic. I mean, you're not only the quality, but wanting to write poetry, feeling at risk every moment when you're out in the world. And so those are the kinds of people that I spent every Tuesday night with from spring of 2014 through 2019. And I don't think any of that was wasted. If you look at the way I present to you, you'd say, well, where did that speaking style come from? I tell you where it came from. So the Rouge Lounge, which is where that Tuesday night poetry began, had all these dark corners. And I thought I was the least adept poet there. And so I tried to develop a speaking style that could reach all the dark corners so people wouldn't like murmur and stuff during my lousy poetry. And actually, so when I later got formal poetry mentoring, I was told that my speaking style is one of the strong suits. I'm trying to think, but that came from my poetry life because I felt that like nobody knows, but I'm a less clever poet than anyone in this room. And I don't want murmuring and people saying things under their breath when I'm reciting poetry. So I want to like penetrate all the dark corners in the Rouge Lounge. So that's really what I'm doing when I'm speaking. And in many other ways, like let's talk about poverty simulation exercise. Does that sound appealing to you? I can see none of you are saying, yeah, I want to do it. Poverty. So the United Way has this. And I thought that would be a really good thing for me to do. It's a good thing for a physician to do. Poverty underlies a lot, is the basis for a lot of medical disease. So why not take a poverty simulation exercise? So just think in your mind, what do you think happened? Not only during the exercise itself, but after I got back to work. Just think and try to predict the outcome of this story. So I was proud of what I learned. Like I learned amazing stuff that I never thought about. That most government offices are closed during the lunch hour. So when an impoverished person gets there at lunch hour, they can't accomplish anything because the office is closed. I never knew that before. So, but compared to the other people, I managed to keep my home. I sort of kept things together, and I finished the exercise having learned a lot and feeling, well, I did reasonably well. If this was real, I at least survived. I didn't lose anything big. So I'm all happy. I get back to the hospital bubbling with my positive vibes about this experience. Started to tell people about it. Everybody around me thought I just wasted 2.5 hours doing the most incredibly stupid thing they ever heard. That when they got into medical school, they realized they never need to worry about being impoverished, and they never thought about it again, and they never will. That's so crazy. Don't you realize what you're missing? I mean, it's just, amazing. So what you would say, well, this life of yours mixing with people that you don't belong with, what could go wrong with that? Well, not very much. There are a few things. Like when poetry ended, you got all these at-risk young people and me, I'm like 50 years older than them. And we're preparing to go home. I should not give one of them a ride home. I did that once, and I realized, oh boy, it's just like, I'm never doing this again, because the person lived in like the worst part of town and was starting to fantasize about what other things they could do with me. Now that I've taken them home, just the beginning, right? Oh boy, and I just realized, well, that's fine. That's the one thing I can't do. I can interact, I can talk to them, but if they ask for a ride home, the answer is no, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Because it's not a good idea. But that's really the only bad thing. And there were so many other satisfactions. Think of helping somebody who's really homeless, whose only access to computers is at the library, and maybe that's where they shower and stuff too. So that there were those people emailing me about editing their poetry. It was so cool. It's like, wow, And you say, but it's of no practical value. No, I don't think so. So now I'm writing a grant. It's a CI HR grant. It was, submitted some time ago. We'll hear about it in February. And it's talking about this idea of how good AGI could be and sort of concepts, scenarios. Well, how good could it be? Give me a scenario. And you can't just use medical students, right? I mean, no matter how you think about it, they're kind of a selected group. So I'm using the poetry group and medical students. That is great. They're both approximately the same age, and there are many similarities. They're both sort of diverse in terms of ethnic background and stuff. It's just they think about different things because medical students are thinking about succeeding in medical school, and the at-risk poets are thinking about surviving the day and not getting beat up or attacked, So like the poetry, it's kind of shocking to think about. If you look at the subjects of the poetry in this group, about 20% or a fifth had to do with sexual assault, and about a fifth had to do with suicide ideation. So you think, well, that's crazy. You're the only physician there. You got people writing poetry about suicide. But do you know that there are suicide prevention courses ordinary people can take? And all the poetry leaders had taken that course. So they know more about suicide prevention than I do. So it's not that if something bad happened, everybody would say, well, you were the only physician there. And nothing did happen. There was one poet who took their own life during that whole period. And it was months and months since they had been to the poetry session. So, I mean, it happened, and I'm sorry that it happened, but it was not directly related to the poetry at all. And so I'm not saying any of you need to do anything like that, but I'm just saying that every day I think I benefit from the extraordinary heterogeneity of the mix of the input that I've gotten about things, as opposed to talking only to physicians or only people my own age. I've hardly any friends my own age, and so I don't just mean that they're all younger. Some of them are remarkably older, right? But I mean, that's cool too. That crystallized wisdom gets really crystallized when you get up and up and up. I think part of the benefit, but just think about listening to me now and the effects on you. There's another benefit from this course, and that is talking to each other, because this course is sort of like a filter. You take the 40,000 people at the university, and a very, very small fraction is really interested in the long-range future. And you're that, right? Anyway, you've actually taken a course like this that's about speculative things that haven't occurred yet. That makes you pretty unusual. And it means the other people here, if you talk to them, it's a remarkable experience to meet the other people. So it's not just me. And the other people teaching in the course are also, a remarkable resource. And think about the question of who can teach in the course. Because in the beginning, from the outset, there's been seamless sort of interaction between the group of people teaching and the group of people learning. We've had the course open to the general public. We've had people in their 70s sitting in their seats taking it. And we've had young people like in the Peter Lougheed Leadership College and so on, teaching, but also learning. Yeah. So it kind of is also good to challenge your ideas of who you can learn from, who you can teach, whether you can teach, so on. Yeah. So I would like to sort of contribute to your kind of thinking that there is no limit to how big you can think. That's the way I feel. And even if you couldn't possibly feel like that, it's at least useful to kind of think, well, if I could think like that, how would it feel, you know? So and when you sense there's something different about me, so the students 3 years ago said, you know, Dr. Solez, you're neuroatypical in a positive way. And if you did a personality test, we could figure out what that was. So I thought, yeah, but you know, it's probably embarrassing. So I'll take the test, but I'm not going to show the results to anybody, you know? And that's not what happened. I turned out to be like a poster child for personality tests. So my openness to experience is like sky high. That's not sensation seeking. Those are different, right? But openness to experience is sky high. And neuroticism, worrying about things that don't need to be worried about, is practically zero. So most normal people, they spend time worrying about things that don't need to be worried about. That's just part of the human condition. And for whatever reason, I don't do that. And you can say, well, so when did this start? I think it started very, very early. When I was born, my father was a physician in training. And so he was on call the night I was born. So he didn't see me till the next day. So he goes to the newborn nursery. There are all these kids lined up in bassinets with, you know, name tags and stuff. And the other kids are crying and bawling. And I'm smiling and bawling. What's something going on with this kid? Yeah, so it possibly began very early. Yeah. Okay, so we have 13 minutes. Any other things you would like to discuss? So Shauna Pandya, what I would point out, she is celebrity-ish like person. She denies being one, but I think every way you might think of it, she sort of is. Future astronaut, and you know, she's done a lot of things to prepare for that, and martial arts, so a kind of, you know, physician like me who's done a lot of really unusual things, and she's much younger than me. She was in medical school when we first began the course in 2011. So that would give you some idea. But I think she's a remarkable role model, not only for women, but, you know, for everybody. Just kind of thinking about how things go with her and things that she's done. And David Pierce, who you meet on the 24th, he's one of the founders of transhumanism. He's never had a professional haircut. Think of how many people you know who have never had. So he looks a bit unkempt, but you know, it's just, yeah, yeah. He also marches to the beat of a different drummer. And then on the 26th, we're talking about pig to human transplants. And I just talked about that in maybe one of the most successful professional presentations that I've given. In it, I make a lot of predictions about what AI is going to do in 2023. So they've asked me to come back in October and revisit those predictions and see which of them came true and which ones didn't. So it's really exciting with the kind of you know, dynamic challenge in that you could think of never making predictions or never making any controversial statements. It's the safe way to live, right? So there's one other thing. I was just looking at Emily and realizing there's an opportunity that I want to kind of describe to you guys that may be of zero interest to any of you. But there are two things about France. The next Banff transplant pathology meeting is in Paris. We think it'll be September the 9th to the 15th of 2024. Now, at every Banff meeting, the past 32 years, Banff transplant pathology meeting that I've run, we've had a student team that like does the AV stuff and videography and that sort of thing. But France is different because we have had a student exchange with a kidney physician in Le Mans, France. And actually, Emily has been there twice. So, so somehow for this meeting in Paris in September 2024, we can't just have any old student videography team. We could have a bilingual team, French and English, made up of the students who've already been to Le Mans and the French people that they met there. I don't know. Maybe none of that will work, but I'm going to write to the person in charge at that end, seeing what she wants to do about this, because I think it'd be really cool to surprise people, like, where did this bilingual videography team of people who already know about kidney stuff, where did this come from, So anyway, I don't know whether that's of interest to any of you, but it's a new idea I just had yesterday that I'm going to pursue, and something will happen. Okay. So I'm willing to let you out 8 minutes early if you don't have anything else you want to discuss. So we will then meet by Zoom on the 12th and the 17th, and we will meet again in this room on the 19th. Yeah, so that's the way it will go. And the next week after that, I think we'll also be totally Zoom, the 24th with David Pearson and the 26th with me talking about pig to human transplants. If you want to shift our interest to having everything face to face, then you need to show interest in some of these social interaction things, right? And say, yeah, we're going to restart the club associated with the course, and we're going to have the final presentations in a sort of holiday kind of surrounded by food and drink and street performers performing with bullwhip and stuff like that. Yeah. But anyway, you don't need to do any of that. I'm just saying that if you want to push back against us doing most of this course on Zoom, then the way to do that is to really put some energy into the kind of social interactions that some years we have had in the course. Yeah. So that's certainly possible. Okay. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.